If you would like to learn web development or just brush up on your coding skills, then go check out howtocodewell.net because this has all of my coding courses and we've covered things like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, Python, Linux, Docker, and more. I'm also the author of Docker in Motion from Manning Publications and Python Clean Coding, as well as Python Microservices from Pact Publications. Before I do start today's show, I just want to say a massive thank you to all of the Patreon supporters who have allowed me to create this kind of content. Thank you ever so much, and if you would like to become a supporter of the channel, please go to patreon.com/howtocodewell. Your support is greatly appreciated. Okay, let's get on with the show. Hello coders and welcome to another How to Code Well podcast. Today's topic is going to be a mixed bag. We're going to be talking about database administration. We're going to be talking about ADL, Agile Delivery Leads. We're going to be talking about remote working. And I am joined today by a very good friend of mine, Chris Ginn. Hi Chris, how's it going? Have you had a good week?
Hello everyone, nice to be here. I'm looking forward to sharing my findings with you and hoping to maybe take you down a track that you hadn't considered before.
Yeah, so I didn't know what an Agile Delivery Lead was until I met Chris. So we'll talk about that. But first up, let's talk about your career journey. Can you talk about how you became a DBA?
Well, it's one of those journeys. I fell into it. I never expected to be a DBA, just like I didn't expect to become an Agile Delivery Lead or Scrum Master. So some years ago, I was working for an aerospace company in Gloucester called Doughty. It's quite a well-known firm. They're now owned by GE, a much larger American firm. I was originally employed as someone to put in NT4. That's how long ago it was. Oh. So I ripped out an old NetWare network, not that I'm sure any of your listeners have ever seen anything that old, to put in NT4. And I was also tasked with looking after their ERP platform.
Right. And so, before we carry on, what is an ERP? Just to
ERP,
clarify.
So Enterprise Resource Planning. Think SAP, systems like that. They had a very small one called Fourth Shift that I don't think is in existence anymore.
Oh, right.
So it's essentially the business system. It does all their invoicing, it does all the purchase orders, all the boring stuff, really. So eventually I was sent on courses to learn the DB platform on that. At this point, it wasn't SQL Server. So what they needed was someone to essentially extract flat files from the system. And back then, the cheapest way to do it was extract the flat files, put them into Access, put a bit of a front end on it, and present the data as was needed. You know, it was.
Sorry, so these flat files, were they like CSV files, text files? What were they?
CSVs. Nothing Flash. Basic ASCII CSV. Cool.
So you did the flat files, and then you moved on to the SQL Server stuff, yeah? So
we again, we're going back 20 years nearly. So it was just you learn very quickly that Access doesn't scale. As soon as you've got more than one or two people on your Access database, it just doesn't play ball. So we very quickly realized that we needed to scale up, hence SQL Server, and that's how my life started as a DBA. We outgrew Access really quickly and needed SQL Server as a platform.
Wow. Okay, so I mean, how long were you doing that for?
I did that for Doughty's I was actually a DBA for them for about 2 or 3 years. Then I moved on. Then I took my first role as a true DBA into my next role.
I see. Okay, so what was the difference between the true DBA and the next role that was a DBA from the DBA that you became in Doughty's?
Not a lot, really. In fact, it seemed to be a step up role. But it wasn't really. I ended up doing more of the same sort of sysadmin work. It wasn't until I really left that company and moved on to what was MessageLabs and became Symantec that I became what I would consider a true DBA.
Okay.
And from there, I started life in QA, running their labs,
Oh, wow.
ensuring that they had data to play with. So again, that was setting up SQL Server, stripping down their production system, creating test systems from that, and doing that. That was good fun. And
Wow.
that's where I learned replication.
I never knew you were in QA. That's
Oh yeah, I spent 5, maybe 6 years in QA.
Right. Wow.
So I learned to test, and yeah, obviously out of that, I learned to
Yeah.
test. I think I've even passed ICEB at one point.
What's that?
That is, I can't remember what ICEB stands for, but it's the qualification to say that you're a qualified tester.
Right. Gosh, I never knew that existed. Wow. Okay. So, I mean, we'll talk about qualifications and certifications.
Yeah, we'll come back to that.
in a second. So, a bit of a difficult question, I think. This a bit open. I mean, what was it that led you down that road in the first place to become a DBA? What was the thing that was attractive as a DBA?
I enjoyed technology. I very much enjoyed working with SQL Server. It is an excellent product.
Right.
And again, I appreciate now that in the open source world, Postgres has caught up. But at this point, when you needed to buy a boxed product, Oracle was just far too expensive. You just couldn't justify the cost. Yeah. And SQL Server, it was stable. It was cheap. It ran. It had the tools, and I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the analysis part. I think that's what I enjoyed about QA the most was some code had gone out. I'd be given a stored proc that wasn't working properly, and I had to unpick the SQL to work out why it was broken.
I see.
I really enjoy that.
Finding and fixing problems in data.
Indeed.
Nice.
And again, data manipulation. We've got some weird data issue. It's like some really odd data has been inserted into the database.
Yep.
It makes the front end really unhappy, and you have to work out why.
Right.
I still enjoy that now. I even, again, fast forwarding on to being essentially a Scrum Master, Agile Delivery Lead, I still get my hands dirty in data issues from time to time, just because it's fun.
Yeah, I mean we'll talk about that later on, but I mean that must really help you. Having that behind you, that sort of technical know-how behind you, I guess you get to understand the problems in a more granular fashion because you've had that experience.
It really helps to translate. It really does.
Yeah. So okay, so what in this career journey? What are the qualifications that you got from DBA?
None.
None.
In all honesty, none. It's all on the job work. I have been on numerous Microsoft courses over the years, but I never took. Is it MS? I can't. It's MSD. I can't remember what it was. It's one MSDBA type one. The company wouldn't pay for it. In all honesty, and to be fair, with the amount of on-the-job training I had, it was fine. You can become. I ended up becoming a senior DBA in the end.
Right.
Once you've got the practical experience, I just think the qualifications are irrelevant. I've again interviewed many people over the years, and I would much prefer to have a good, in-depth technical conversation and work out what their skills are, than rather someone give me 3 or 4 pieces of paper saying I'm this skilled. I
definitely agree with that. Definitely. And you mentioned something that I just want to pull apart just for a minute. You said you became a senior DBA. Now,
so
what is that?
What is that? That's the go-to person. That's again the person that gets called at 3 o'clock in the morning when everything's gone down. So carrying on my career journey a little bit. Whilst I then left. This is still Symantec.
Yeah.
So eventually, some people moved around the business who knew me very, very well and said, please come and work in production. For a while, I loved my job in QA too much. Like, no, I'm fine. And in the end, they crossed my palm with silver. And so I decided to make the move across to production, as you do when these things happen. And that's essentially when I inherited the title senior, because you have to be in that position. And essentially for the UK Business Day, I was in charge of probably 500 SQL servers around the globe.
Oh, my word. I mean, that just blows my mind. Wow.
It was a lot. We were at one point. Microsoft came into what was MessageLabs at the time and looked at our SQL Server installation with Replication and said, this is the biggest we've ever seen.
Oh my gosh.
This is bigger than anything we had in the labs. That would have been early 2000s, maybe mid 2000s. We would have been biggest in the business.
That's insane. That's insane. And you were looking after those. I mean, my brain would just explode. I wouldn't know what to do. Well, I don't know what to do. I'm not a DBA. I've obviously worked with SQL, although I use MySQL, cough cough. But we've had,
we won't go down that alleyway.
We've had many a conversation about that. So I mean, I just wouldn't know where to start, because you've touched on replication there. So does that mean that you're dealing with a lot of redundancies and things like that?
No, it really doesn't.
Okay.
So essentially what it was we had a centralized database platform that would replicate any customer updated data around the globe. So imagine you're a customer and you wanted to update your domain or add some domains to your email scanning platform. That would then replicate around the globe to all our other data centers, so that those records were available to say, okay, this company has now got this domain, please scan their email.
Wow.
And it was more, you just need to have a really, really good monitoring system. And most of the time, SQL Server doesn't fall over. It gets such a bad rep, but it doesn't. It just sits there and runs most of the time.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean,
give it memory, give it disk.
That's such an interesting journey from building text files, essentially, to looking after huge amounts of data over
multi-terabyte. It was. I think our data warehouse was probably around 5 or 6 terabytes at this point. And again, this was years ago. That's average now. And our main configuration database was about 80 or 90 gigabytes from memory. But again, we're going back now. 10 years, maybe more. Again, this is when that was big. Now it's like, small fry.
That's insane, though. That's wow. And were you being called late at night and stuff like that when things?
So again, you would go on an on-call rota,
right?
And if you were the on-call DBA, you'd be called, and most of the time it was fine. The only time it was really difficult is if you got like a 3 a.m. call in the middle of summer. You get up, you're groggy, you got to think, right, what's broken? Work out what's broken. But by the time you sort of fixed it, you're probably an hour and a half later, and it's bright daylight on a summer's morning. You just don't get back to sleep. And if it's it's of a weekend, it's like, that's your weekend ruined. But on a weeknight, you're then back at work for 9 a.m. and you've not had a proper night's sleep. It does affect you on call. 24/7 on call.
Can you sort of talk about like loosely a typical problem that you would face?
Typical problem. Generally, it was where something like replication could go out of sync. So you would need to make sure that with SQL, this is specifically SQL Server replication. So what can happen is certain data, we're talking latency here. So if there's been a massive data let's say someone's done a mass update and we've got probably 500,000 records to replicate. That would be fine to EMEA type data centers. So our main data centers were pretty much London based, working out the UK. Replicating that sort of data to EMEA, fine. Replicating that data to the US, pretty much fine. But as soon as you look at Asia Pac, their latency and the amount of data to transit that far, and we're talking Australia, so we're talking Asia, we're talking Hong Kong, and we're mainly talking Australia here. It would just take a long time for that data to actually get committed at the far end. So you'd have to go through, and you just have to massage it, and maybe you could adjust your data throughput settings, and you just need to make sure that it had replicated fine. That was generally massaging.
I mean, it sounds super stressful, but I can tell from the way you're talking about it that you were really enjoying it.
Oh, it was a brilliant job. Absolutely brilliant job.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, I didn't even know those. I mean, I knew those roles existed, but I didn't even know how to, where to start. But I guess, starting from text files, moving on to SQL servers, and then it's just a case of scaling that up, right? And then going up the chain. And
it's just been, you become confident. I've had some great people train me over the years. I've had some exceptional teachers. There was one person now who's sadly died of cancer, and a chap called Mike Downs, and the guy was phenomenal.
Right.
He worked with the SQL Server since the first version on NT351. He knew everything.
Wow.
He even found defects in system stored procedures and sent them off to Microsoft. The guy was a legend. So I had some great teachers, and then you just learn from the best, and then you become the best.
Yeah. So I mean, the next sort of section, I suppose we should move into is the agile stuff, which is completely a different territory, right?
Yeah. Why would you want to leave?
I mean,
when you've mastered why would you change?
When you're at the top, why would you go somewhere else? What was the thing that moved you into that other direction?
I've done it all. Once you've worked at the very, very top, I wanted a new challenge. I wanted something else to do.
Right.
Even whilst I was still at Symantec, I was doing a lot of ITIL stuff. There was lots of additional work I was doing because I knew the systems backwards. Mm-hmm. People much more junior than me could come to me and say, "What's the problem?" And I could just say, "It's this," or "It's that." Once you've reached that level, it's like, right, what else can I do? So hence the agile bit. So obviously I got made redundant from Symantec. I took on a company with a very, very large American healthcare supplier, the 5th biggest in the world. They needed a production DBA that could be completely self-reliant, work from home model. That was 5 years ago. And then likewise, I went in there, I made lots of changes, putting cluster in to make sure that their SQL servers were stable, going from, just going in and tidying things up and making sure the SQL servers are being kept up to date, all proper disaster recovery stuff. So I went in and did all of that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But whilst I was going, I started to get involved in PI planning events. So where people, we're talking scaled agile framework type work here. So I was going on these huge 2-day events where people were discussing agile, and it was before I saw what actually agile could do. I'd only ever really been involved in projects where they were done in MS Project. They were all waterfall. Some of the project managers were, let's say, iffy at best. And it's like you work on these projects, and it's like, you sort of write your own project plan yourself, thinking, you'd like me to do this, but I'm actually going to do it like that, and you deliver it anyway. And I thought, right, when I started to see agile, this actually works. So you go in, and you see these people discussing the work that needs to be done. And at this point, we were working on a MVP, a minimum
viable product.
Minimal product, yes.
Yeah.
So back in the old days, you would have called this a beta, where these days the marketing people have twisted it, and you've now got a minimal viable product. So we can go off, we can sell it, but it's not got any bells and whistles yet. So I thought this was really, really interesting, and I'm like, well, I'm learning this. And this, within the organization, everyone needed to start. They needed certain people to go in and focus and say, we need to go in and change your department from the current ad hoc, chaotic methods where people throw work at you left, right, and center. You're getting work at you from email. You're getting work at you from your ticketing systems, water cooler chats where people just say, can you do this for me? And it was your typical chaotic IT environment that we've, all of us IT professionals have worked in.
We've all experienced it.
Like.
Yeah.
We all know what it's like.
Yeah.
So I think that the big goal of the role that I took on was I became, the title was Agile Delivery Lead. So I went in as a senior person to go in and lead this, transform it. But essentially I was performing the role of a Scrum Master and a little bit of a product owner. We'll break those down and explain them in a bit. So
yeah.
I went in, I learned a tool called Rally, which is like Jira. They're all very much of a muchness. Once you've got experience in one, they're all very, very similar. I can use both.
Cool.
So I was seeing, like I said, these events where the product owners were going in, they were creating the features, they were creating the user stories, the teams would break out, and the technical people would task it all out, they'd set their estimates. And I just thought, I'd like to do this. I'd like a change.
Okay.
And I just enjoyed it. I think just to sum up, I think I just grew tired of having very poor project managers manage products when I know I could do it better. It's like, well, we can do this better, and this solution seems to work much better because I'm a servant leader. When I help my teams now, I'm there to protect the guys like us, the technical guys, from the people that want you to do all the work now and pull you left, right, and center. I'm there to say, no, we are committed to our work this sprint. It is possible that we can alter the work this sprint, but you're not going to get the products delivered that you like them to have delivered. I enjoy that function.
Excellent.
I'm there to help you.
So it sounds as though you discovered, if by accident, I guess, another challenge, another problem, and you found the solution, and you went for that. That's really good. I applaud people who change directions and adapt and move and evolve. That's really, really cool. You said a couple of things in there that I wouldn't mind pulling apart. But first up, can I just go back to the DBA just a minute and just ask whether or not you would go back to being a DBA?
Would I go back to being a DBA? As ever, I think the magic question is the money's right, of course. But yes, I would never say never. But at the moment, at this stage in my career, I think my next. I'd like to go in a few, I'd like to go into a few more organizations and perform the agile transformations and help those people be more efficient, just how I've seen and helped fellow techies to just make their lives easier. Well, I'd like to do that some more. Well,
this is a unique position that you have. It's the fact that you've been a DBA at the top of the game and you're now an Agile Delivery Lead. And I don't know anybody else who's done that. So, I mean, that's a very sought after talent, I would imagine. Let's just pedal back a bit, because for the viewers of How to Code Well, let's talk about Agile in a nutshell.
Yeah,
as in,
let's break it apart.
What is waterfall?
Waterfall. Now, again, most people have worked on projects where the project manager has got their key milestones in MS Project, and you go from delivery to delivery to delivery to delivery, and essentially the project manager is running the show. They're shouting at you, telling you what you've got to do and when it's got to be delivered by, and that's it. That's waterfall in a nutshell. It's what all Prince 2 practitioners practice. It's what is now considered, well, by anyone in Agile, old school delivery management or delivery management. It's legacy.
So what is the opposite then? If waterfall is the old, what does Agile solve?
Agile allows the developer, or not, it doesn't have to be developer, the technical person, because it doesn't just work for devs, it works for infrastructure people as well. It allows them greater clarity of the work that they've got in front of them and what work they've got in the backlog. It gives them more visibility of their workload. Okay. So as in, like, they can see the tasks that they're working on now and the tasks that are coming up in the future? Pretty much. And I think we'll tease that out when we talk about user stories a little bit more. Oh, yeah. Because I have to confess my my lack of knowledge in terms of this, because as a freelancer, I work on many projects that are done in many different ways, and some are called Agile, and I'm not too sure whether they are. And some are definitely not. I think they're Agile, and I don't think they've quite made it yet. Again, every company goes through an Agile journey. You cannot become Agile overnight. I think on average, it takes a year to 18 months to be fully Agile, and you'd expect to start to see your improvements in about 6 months. Wow. To do a full transformation takes time, but we're talking at a large sort of company organization. You could take a small Scrum team of, say, 5 or 6 developers. Yeah. You could go like Kanban, and we'll talk on these terms in a bit more. Yeah. You could take that team in a few months. I think there's going to be a couple of people sort of shouting at us, asking whether or not we need to use Agile for startups, because I know that there's a lot of startups who listen. So if you were, because you said 5-6 devs, I know people who only have 1 or 2. In that case, I think Would they definitely need Agile? No, maybe not. But a Kanban board is going to help you all the way. You don't need any flash tools. A Kanban board you can do with Post-it notes, or you can do it on a whiteboard. I think the takeaway I would give to someone as small as them is, as long as you've got your work documented somewhere, again, a basic board is Kanban, then you know I've got this work to do, it's going to take this amount of time, and these people are working on it. It's just visibility.
And Kanban, can you just define that? Is it like a things to do list and like a done section?
Pretty much. So a basic Kanban board, you would have visibility of your work that's coming in. So these are the tasks that I've got to code. These are the things I've got to fix. And then someone will have ordered the list. So you've got to do, and in your to do, it's like, I've got these things to do. And generally the one at the top is the next one you take off the list because it's the highest priority. Then the next section on the board you'd have is in progress. This is the stuff that people are working on. Then you've got done, but again, we probably need to touch on definition of done. You've got accepted. So accepted is it's been through QA, it's released, and there are no defects, and everybody in the business is happy. It's out in production with no issues whatsoever. Right.
Okay. So it basically maps out the journey of the dev work, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So again, this is going to highlight my naivety here. Scrum Master. What is a Scrum Master?
A Scrum Master is the person that takes care of in this case, the developers. So my function in that regard is I'm there as their servant leader, to use the Agile terms. I'm there to ensure that they are doing the work to the best of their ability and nobody is distracting them or disturbing them. And when they get a blocker, let's say the piece of work's blocked, you're waiting for a piece of code from someone else. They've not yet put it up to Git for you. So you would have to block that and say, and this person's not committed it yet. I can't do anything. Tools down. We don't want Pete tools down. So I would then get on the phone, chase, however, that person, right, Pete's waiting for this piece of code. He's now blocked on his deliverable. What's going on? I'm there to serve you, to make you efficient.
So it's not necessarily a project owner, right? It's
project owner is a different function. We should probably talk about that next.
Yeah. So what would you define a project owner as?
A project owner, so generally, let's say we're working for a company and they want some funky new features on their website. So they come in and the product owner's like, right, we want to do this. It's going to make us millions. So they'll say, right, great. They'll devise a feature and work with the Scrum Master to get that feature with enough user stories in it so that this thing can be built.
Right.
The product owner liaises with the customers because the customer's like, yeah, we want this whizzy feature and we want to develop it now. And then it's more for the Scrum Master then to liaise with the product owner to say, yeah, you can have this feature. Yeah. You can have it delivered in probably 3 or 4 sprints.
Yeah.
And again, a sprint is generally a 2-week time box, 2 weeks of time. And then we would ensure that it would be delivered, and the Scrum Master would work with the developers to make sure that the user stories that they've been given are tasked out in exactly the way that developer is happy to do the piece of work. That's what we would generally term the definition of ready. So you've been given a piece of work, so that's the user story, and you would have an estimate of how long that user story would take to take. But when you come to task it out, it's possible that when you actually put the hours against the actual user story, it can increase. That's the difference between actual task in hours and user story points, which is user story points is a hard concept.
Yeah.
Most people understand.
I mean, I've worked in a place where it was kind of, to the people who knew what they were doing, it made sense. But to me, it was arbitrary numbers. The higher the number, the more complex the task.
Pretty much. So essentially, the user story points is a Fibonacci number for people to think, yeah, this user story is going to be difficult, easy, small, large. I prefer to think in T-shirt sizes. It makes everything easy. So if a user story has got one point, it's extra small. If it's got 8, I always forget the Fibonacci. Is it 9 I forget. It's a larger one. I'm showing off. I can never remember.
It's too late in the day.
Yeah, but the higher the numbers, the more complex it is, and that's when you get to XXL. So think in T-shirts, and again, that's the function of the Scrum Master, to help their team to say, okay, we've got to work out your capacity and you do your planning, and that's for me to help you do. And I sent you a spreadsheet, and I'm more than happy for the guys to see that, just to make it how easy it is. It just made everyone's life easier, because nobody can think in Fibonacci numbers.
No. Oh gosh, no. Okay, so you're technically an Agile Delivery Lead. So is this different from a Scrum Master?
I think a little bit, because the function that I did, so I was acting as the product owner for an infrastructure team. So these are the techie guys looking after the servers, looking after the networking. And within the company that I was in, I was the first person to actually take an infrastructure techie team agile. Otherwise, it was always just developers.
Okay.
So I worked with the guys and we did the transformation.
Okay.
So as I was acting as the product owner, so imagine they're doing a data center move, they're doing a Linux upgrade, a point upgrade, a Windows upgrade, some patching. That would then be added to... We'd add a feature, add user stories to it, and I would act as the product owner, working out which ones were, with the senior management, working out which bits to do first. This feature is more important. This one, if we don't upgrade this, we're liable to be hacked. All the usual joys of operations.
Yeah, so like a critical path analysis to work out what needs to happen first and all of that stuff. Cool. Yeah. Okay, that sounds super interesting. I mean, that's. When I in my naivety, when I became a developer, I just didn't have a clue what any of this was. It was just I just wanted to write code. But the more complex the systems and the larger scale the enterprise you're working for, you obviously need to have these kind of gatekeepers, I guess. Is that the right term? Gatekeepers?
Yeah, no, it's fine. I think it goes back to something we were discussing before when you were going to ask. Why be a DBA over a programmer? And I'm going to take that to why am I not a programmer? I never enjoy coding. Yes, I can write some epic SQL, and I can script in Bash, and I'm not so good with PowerShell. Going back, I wrote some epic batch files.
Excellent.
I can script and I can write code. I can follow code. Yeah. But I'd much rather be in operations. I'd much rather liaise with my developers. Again, going back to being a DBA. You've got a very, very close relationship with your DB developer. It's like the two sides of the coin.
Yeah.
You've got the guy that runs it in production and the guy that's written it. Yeah. When you start seeing issues like, this isn't scaling, you need to do it like this, or I just always enjoyed the operational side more. And
in terms of the DBA stuff, right? I mean, what are the advantages of being of having that background as a DBA? And now being an Agile Delivery Lead, what is the things that you can bring to the table that other Agile Delivery Leads can't?
It's the technical aspect. I can completely understand what the techie guys are telling me. There's no chance of pulling the wool over my eyes either. I think what the guys love is they can speak in full-on IT tech. Doesn't matter which discipline, networking, Linux, Windows, coding. I might not understand it all, but I can say, hang on a minute, not following that. They can break it down for me, and then I'm off. It's having that expertise to talk techie. With the flip side then is the techie guys have explained to me the issues or blockers or what's going well in, again, technical language, and then I can translate that to the senior leadership team. I can speak to the directors, the CTOs, all of the other people, the people that generally developers don't like talking to.
So, that in itself is a very important skill to have, to be able to talk technical to technical people and then to talk technical to non-technical people in a way that humanizes and translates the issues.
Very hard. Not many people can do it. No. I'm glad that over my career, that it's something that I've been very good at.
Excellent. That's really cool. I like the fact that you've gone through this journey and you've been able to bring all the all the cards with you. I mean, that's something I really take my hat off to you. It's the fact that you found various different issues, and you've started from text files, and now you've gone all the way up to building humongous servers, database servers, and looking after those, to looking after teams. And I guess because you know the technical side of it, you're able to then determine and sort of preempt issues that go forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's fair. It helps. Yeah, you can judge the morale of your team. That's very important. So you've got that aspect. You've got I'll just leave it there. Yeah, I think that's fair.
So, I mean, what can people do to make their delivery process easier and less stressful?
It depends. Again, it depends on the size.
Yeah.
If we're talking a small operation without QA, then obviously your unit testing's key, making sure that your code is doing what it's supposed to. A lot of I'm speaking to developers now. Some of these tools now that auto scan your code, looking for known common flaws for is it buffer overflow?
Buffer overflow.
There's so many cool automated tools now that just didn't exist 10 years ago, that use those. Make the most of your QA. Don't be scared of your QA. If they find a defect in your code, that's them just doing their job. Never be angry with them.
No.
I'm just, I find a few developers over the years that would be miffed when I found issues. It's like, no, it's fine. I'm just doing my job. And I think, again, operationally, the worst time to find a defect is at 3:00 in the morning. And I find them at 3:00 in the morning. I'd much rather some tester or a developer was savvy enough to just do some proper code analysis and try and be as bug-free as possible. But obviously 100% bug-free is impossible. There's always going to be issues.
Oh, yeah. I keep saying that with code coverage. Even if your code coverage is 100%, doesn't mean that you doesn't mean it's 100% bug-free. The users are going to be using the system in a way that you never even thought of.
And they will. That's the thing. A user will do something that you never envisaged was possible, and you can go, that's when it'll go pop at 3 a.m. Yeah.
Now, something that we haven't touched on is the fact that you've done a lot of this remotely. How has that been? So
during COVID, it's been exceptional. So obviously I've gained the experience over the years. It's really useful to have gained the experience beforehand so that when you're working with teams that aren't used to being remote, you can coach and advise of just like, I think rule number one, when I first started this, I was working out of the smallest bedroom in my house, and I could lean and touch the walls. And after a year or two,
bit like here.
I went stir crazy. And then, like you, Pete. And in the end, I'm in my office now. I had an extension put on the back of my house, custom built exactly how I wanted it, and it helps. So I think for a developer, music on, head down, writing code all day. It doesn't matter. It really, really doesn't matter whether you're on site or not. And we're talking a senior developer here. With juniors straight out of college, obviously you need to be working with someone a bit more senior to get them coached up.
Yeah.
I don't think a junior developer could work from home 100% of the time. With the percentage 70-30, maybe 50-50 after a while? I'm not sure.
I agree.
Once you're senior enough, work from home is fine. For me, and now we'll take the agile stuff, as I worked with very, very senior people, it was easy. We did some stuff in London together, face to face, but once you started the transformation and the guys know what they're doing, I can perform my sprint planning and all my ceremonies remotely. Is that the best? I would say probably not. So I think that the magic split is probably the 70-30. 70% of the stuff I can do remotely on Skype as we are now, Zoom, whatever your platform of choice. You know, you've got the person there, you can share your screen, and screen sharing, you're probably more efficient than having the person sat next to you anyway, because they're sat focused on it.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
But nothing beats the 30% in the office. You do lose the nonverbal communication when someone's struggling and you can see their facial expressions of like, I don't get this. You do lose that remotely.
Yeah.
And some stuff, it's just easier to sit around a table and have a chat, open a frat chat, and look at everyone's body language.
It's also easier to hide, right? When you're remote, it's easier to just sort of hide and then think, oh, you know, it's easier than it actually is, or it's easy to on the other side of it, it's easier to overcomplicate things because you end up sort of isolating yourself away from your team. But on the other hand, I'm a remote dev myself, and I've been for many, many years. You have to learn to be aware of those kind of possibilities, and some things that have helped me, for instance, is to time box issues. You know, if I don't solve this issue in the next half an hour, then I'm going to ask someone.
Yeah, and well, the whole magic thing there is it's hard, and I think we all do it. Is you're sat doing your utmost to solve a problem, and you just can't do it.
Yeah.
I always say, go make a cup of tea, go for a walk, do something else. You've got to sometimes give your brain some downtime, and it does make such a difference.
Definitely.
But we all fall into that trap.
Yeah, we all do. I mean, there's pros and cons. Remote working does seem like a luxury to those who aren't remote developers or anything. But there are some negatives to remote dev as well, some of which we've mentioned too.
I think there's another good one that people's wellness is key.
That's
true. You're in the office, you move around a lot. And one thing I do like to do during the day, whether it's lunchtime or after work, is go to the gym. Exercise is key. Us IT people aren't the healthiest bunch generally.
No.
And we must spend time thinking about ourselves and our well-being.
Yep. Definitely agree with that.
Especially
Definitely agree with that.
Work from home.
Yeah, definitely. So, $1 million question here. So, would you go back to an office full time?
I don't think so now. I would have, and I'm obviously in the market trying to find a job. Would I want to be in the office 100%? No. With COVID at the moment, there's no way you're going to be in the office 100% anyway. But I really feel that even if it's work from home 2 days a week, the efficiencies gained of not having people come up to your desk and be disturbed, where you can just get on with some things, being left alone. I think the efficiencies are, you can't be undersold.
Now you just mentioned there that you're in the market. So can I ask, what would your ideal job be?
I would like to maybe contract for a while, but I'd also consider permanent. I'd like to go into some companies and help them on their agile journey, to go in and say, right, what are you doing at the moment? Or if you're not doing it at the moment, what would you like to do? How would you like to do this? You explore the methodologies. The easiest, as we discussed, you start with Kanban. You just start there, because you can just start. You've got to learn terminologies. Every single field in IT has got its own jargon. You just learn that. You start getting used to the terminologies, and you adapt.
Yeah.
Eventually you can go to. You can take some of them. If you read the Agile sites, they all say you do Kanban, you can Sprint, you can Scrum, but you always seem to end up somewhere in the middle with a bit of Scrumban. You get an amalgamation of the two. You pick and choose, but it takes, that's like maybe a year, 18 months into your journey when you start to get a bit clever. Gotcha.
And for those who are listening who are interested in getting in touch and hiring you, how do they? What's your contact details?
LinkedIn, Pete. I'm sure if you put my details on the bottom of the YouTube, that would be excellent.
No worries, we'll do that.
If anyone wants to have a chat, feel free. If anyone would like to hire me at the moment, even better.
Awesome. I'll put your links in the show notes below, and also on wherever I'm pointing at the screen, thinking it's there, somewhere down there.
Magic. Thanks, Pete.
No worries. So going back to just Scrum for a minute, Scrum Masters, what advice do you have to people who are thinking, this is actually something that I'm interested in doing and exploring. Do you have any advice for those kind of people who are sort of interested in this role?
Yeah, as ever to any developer, the internet's your friend. Just have a Google. The big sites you'll find very, very quickly. Read through their advice, because I still read through their advice. There's lots of good information. Sit on some seminars. I'm a certified Scrum Master. The Scrum training that I had was exceptional. It really helped give you an overview. But as ever with being dropped in at the deep end on a course, they give you all the jargon and the terms. You're like, well, how does that work in practice? So again, just think about yourself. Get a pack of Post-it notes. Write out your work that you want to do and stick it to the wall.
Wow.
Just start there and have a go just to organize yourself. Start at the bottom and have a play.
Excellent advice. You mentioned there that you're a certified Scrum Master, right? What was involved with that in order to take that certification? And also, sorry, have you got other certifications as well, or qualifications in that area?
Not anymore. Nothing of relevance. All my Microsoft qualifications long since gone. I remember, it's all NT4 core technologies. I did some VB6, numerous SQL Server courses, 2000, 2005, 2008. But it's all irrelevant. Once you're proliferant in your field, once you know your field well, you can just take the next version, like, they've changed this, bit of Googling and off you go. And it's the same pretty much with the Agile. Once I'd done the course and then had some, again, it's all in the coaching. I love doing the Agile coaching now. I worked with some excellent Agile coaches. I've got some excellent friends that are Agile coaches. And once you've got that circle, the network, it's always about the social network, the people that you can call on of like, right, I'm trying to do this. It's not quite going to plan. How can you advise? Or what's the best practice? You start at best practice. You work with your team and say, okay, best practice says this. We know that's probably not going to work for us. So it goes back to the core bit of Agile is your ceremonies. So you have your stand-up, you have your sit-up. You have your refinement sessions, you do your sprint planning, and you have your retrospective. The core part of the Scrum Master is ensuring that the ceremonies are upheld. And some people say, they're not worth it. But I do think a maximum 15-minute, and this should never be more than 15-minute Scrum call in the morning where you have your little touch base, everyone talks, are you happy? Are you happy? Any blockers? And then everyone's off. Any blockers, it's then for the Scrum Master to talk to that guy or whoever it is, say, okay, right, what's your problem? We'll get it sorted, and off you go. The Scrum call's essential. And I really think backlog refinement is as well. A lot of user stories where they're just thrown at developers. There you go, just go do it. It's like, well, that's not fair. They don't know what to do. You have to ensure that your definition of ready is there. So
I love that. You said a word there. I want to pin that down. You said fair. So you, as someone, as a code monkey myself, fairness and getting tasks to do in a very small period of time,
it's unfair.
It's unfair. It is unfair, and I guess having the safety net of yourself to acknowledge the fairness, that's really important. And because you've been a technical person, you've worked in DBAs, you know the jargon, you know the language, you've walked the walk, you've talked the talk before, you know what is fair and unfair.
Yeah. And that's the big change coming away from the waterfall model. The waterfall model, a project manager will come up to you and say, Mr. Developer, please, can you do this for me? They don't know how long it's going to take. They have no technical expertise knowing what it is. You say, well, that's probably going to take me 2-3 days. Oh, I want it tomorrow. We need it tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's not fair. You can't do it.
As in, why did you ask me the estimate in the first place?
Yeah, because it's irrelevant. You already had the time Now, I'm not saying Agile stops that, because we all know in production you get a severity 1 incident, something's gone horrendously wrong, and it's all hands to the pump to get it fixed. That doesn't change. There's still a risk of being pulled off from the work that you want to do to production issues, other issues.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. You can't. It's not like a start, middle, and end. It's not like a book. It's you've got to adapt and evolve with the day. Essentially, things happen, things move, things change, things break. The users change and play with the system in ways that you've never even dreamt of.
Oh
yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like a fascinating journey that you've gone through, and I'm very intrigued and excited for your future in Agile. It sounds awesome.
Well, again, we've barely touched on what things are, and we've not done the jargon, and we've run out of time. So.
Well, if you're willing, we can certainly do another podcast.
I think we should probably do a deep dive. We spoke about me.
Yeah.
I think we should probably do an Agile deep dive. Again, any of your viewers, throw the questions in. Definitely field the questions. That's always worthwhile. But I think a deep dive is required, because we've skirted around. We've
skirted around a few things. We've had a chat. Well, that's what it is, isn't it?
It's good.
So, Chris, there's a question that I ask all the guests when they come on. It's an end of show question, and that is, if you could spend time learning something that isn't ... in your case Agile based, then what would it be and why?
So this is something fascinating that I've got into recently, and it's megalithic architecture. So we're talking, think pyramids.
Nobody said that before.
Exactly. It's like it's one of those crazy things. There are these humongous, great, multi-ton, not concrete, but stone blocks that were cut back in prehistory, thousands of years ago. I'm fascinated with how they did it. And we were told it was done with stone chisels, and when you start looking at the archaeology, you can see sort of, it looks like cuts with disc saws. I would probably go archaeology. If I had my all time again with what I know now, would I do IT? Yeah, I love IT. I'm in IT because it's great. But I've recently become fascinated in ancient archaeology.
Oh wow, that's brilliant. That's gosh, what is it about ancient archaeology that intrigues you the most?
It's the engineering. I'm still a techie at heart. I want to know how they did it. How did you build that? You did not do that with a stone tool and a crane. How did you move that block over there that's 100 tons? Even if you look at Stonehenge, how did they drag those pillars from Wales to the Salisbury Plain? Like how? Why? It's still an engineer's heart.
Excellent. Well, thank you ever so much for joining and coming on the show, Chris. I really appreciate it. It's a fascinating story. And let's do another one. Let's do a deep dive and go into some of these in a little bit more detail. But thank you ever so much for coming on. And thank you ever so much, everybody, for watching on the YouTubes and listening on the podcast. Happy coding, everybody. I'll see you again next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye.